Tremendous cute, tremendous cute, tremendous cute.
Who's your favorite pitmaster's favorite pitmaster?
Way!
Time for the cook. So, we're doing brisket. This is part 2 of the video series. In part 1, I showed you guys how to go ahead and trim the brisket. Here we're just focusing on the cook, and then I spend a lot of time at the end cutting up the brisket and show you what a properly cooked brisket actually looks like. So, with that, I'm going to shut up and smoke.
Alright, so you know from the first video, we got this thing all trimmed up. So we're just going to jump right into the actual cook. We got salt and pepper, equal parts salt and pepper to use as a rub on this brisket. This is about a 15-pound brisket before I trimmed it. And generally speaking, I use about a quarter cup of salt and a quarter cup of pepper. Excuse me, a quarter cup of salt and a quarter cup of pepper per 15-pound brisket. That generally is just about enough rub so that I don't have to waste any of it at the end. For my backyard briskets, I combine the salt and the pepper, and I put it in an open container, and I sprinkle it on high enough so that I can get an even shake, but not so high that I make a mess. All right. So with the brisket all rubbed, I just want to zoom in real quick and show you. You want to make sure that you get your salt and your pepper along the side of these briskets, okay? You want to make sure you season all around the entire brisket, and you're not just seasoning the top and the bottom of it, because those slices, when you slice up your brisket, are going to expose all sides of the brisket, not just the top. All right. So we're cooking with oak. We're going to go ahead. We got our pit lit. We got it. It's already up to temp, so we're going to set our brisket on there and just let it get ready to do its thing for a few hours. All right. We're cooking at about 275 degrees, so we're going to throw it on the smoker, get in the position that we want it to cook at, and go from there. A couple hours later, we're going to pull this thing off. I do not probe my briskets until I get the color that I'm looking for. That's just, especially when I'm doing backyard, I really want to see that nice black crust develop along the outside of my brisket. Once I get that color, I'll pull it off and I'll take it aside and I'll wrap it up in some paper. How much paper you use is completely on you, or if you want to use foil, you can use basically the exact same process. Lay your foil out on a table and then just roll your brisket up in that. I roll my brisket probably about 2 to 3 times so that I have 1 or 2 layers of paper along the top and the bottom of the brisket, and that just, in my personal opinion, it helps to retain moisture. And your paper is going to get, even though it is butcher paper and it is tough, your paper is going to get wet. So if you roll it up a couple of times, it basically helps to preserve the integrity of the paper so that even as it gets wet, it won't rip and it won't tear as you're handling it, taking it on and putting it on and off the grill. So we're going to insert our probe right at about where the flat meets the point. I always make sure I probe at the flat. I do not put my probe in the point because the flat is the temperature that I'm primarily concerned about. All right. So with our probe inserted, throw it back on the pit, and then we put it in the cooler for a little while after it hit our temperature of 202 degrees, and we let it rest for a couple of hours. Okay. Now it's time for that, what I like to call the grand finale. This is one of my favorite parts. I love pulling the paper off my brisket and seeing how moist, seeing how wet it is, and seeing how greasy it is. It's a sign of a good cook in my personal opinion. As you see me picking up the brisket, you can see how soft that thing is. You want to make sure that you're using paper, you get up all those little crumbs, basically all those little bits of paper, those things those things will pop up all over the place. And I think there's actually another piece somewhere along the cook as well. You'll see I'm pointing out on the decal where the decal was removed and where that flat and the point meet. I was pointing those out by a little clip up in the top right hand corner, so be sure to go ahead and rewind a little bit if you didn't actually catch that. Now let's cut into the brisket and see how our cook did. We got a nice smoke ring. Our fat cap rendered down really good. That fat from the decal that we left between the flat and the point, that rendered down really well. We got really good color. It's nice. It's tender. This thing turned out, I think it turned out really good. All right. So now let's take a couple of slices and see how see if we passed our pull test. The most important thing with the pull test is to make sure that the brisket, when you lay it over your finger or lay it over the knife, that it supports its own weight, but when you pull it apart, it pulls apart nice and easy, okay? For your brisket, you want to cut about pencil size or pencil thick slices, all right? You don't want to cut paper thin slices. That's the sign of an undercooked brisket. And you don't want to cut super thick slices because that's the sign of an overcooked brisket, all right? You want about pencil slices, and you can see that this thing is just pulling apart with absolutely no effort whatsoever, all right? Now, I just want to give you guys a real quick public service announcement, PSA here. Make sure you're not cutting your brisket up until you are ready to eat. All right, I'm chopping this thing up, I'm hacking it up because I'm really just doing it for the purposes of this video. I want to show you guys pull test and bend test for multiple parts of the brisket, all right? But my general rule of thumb is I don't cut into my brisket until it's time to eat. And that's because as soon as you cut it open, doesn't matter how much moisture you put in this thing, whether you inject or you don't inject, it is going to start to lose its moisture as soon as you cut it open, all right? So that's your PSA. Don't cut this thing open until you're absolutely ready. On the point, I just wanted to show you guys on the right hand side, you see that light spot? That's the decal, or the remainder of the decal. You want to make sure that you remove as much of that as possible. Now, in this particular cook, it rendered down, but if you leave too much of it, it will not do that, all right? So make sure that you remove that from remove as much of that from your brisket as you can. I probably should have cut that out, but because we're cooking for backyard, it's not that big of a deal. So again, another bend test, another pull test, a little bit deeper into the flat, and I think that this was a pass. Overall, it was a really good cook, and I was really proud of how this brisket turned out. And I think it's safe to say the family was happy too, because this thing didn't last but maybe a day and a half.
All right, so what do you guys think? Was it a properly cooked brisket? Let me know in the comments, all right? I do this thing for you guys. I'm just out here having fun. This was another video that I did up for the family during the holidays, and I really wanted to show you guys what I consider a properly cooked backyard brisket. Not competition, backyard brisket, okay? So I really hope you guys enjoyed the video. This is part 2 of 2. Be sure to check out part 1 if you hadn't, when I actually trimmed up the brisket. And with that, I'm gonna go ahead and tell you guys to subscribe, hit the thumbs up button, and we'll see you guys on the next video here at Tremendous Q's Cooking Channel, all right? Shut up and smoke, and we'll see you guys later.